have I had a total colonectomy. Like, I have no colon, and I have currently have a J pouch. So the day that I actually realized that I was going to have surgery, it was an emergency surgery. Like, I was sick so long. Like, God has really put some really good friends in my life, because at one time, I told y'all I was always a big girl. And at this point, I had been losing weight because, and I just thought I looked good. And there was a fight night, and my friends, they pulled me together. It was kind of a little mini intervention. And they were like, "Jennifer, you look horrible." And I was like, "What?"
It's not funny, but it's funny when your people are going to tell you what you need to hear.
Girl, they were like, "Jennifer, you look bad." And I was like, "What you mean?" I had my little low-rise jeans on. That was when, you put the little thong up on the side. I just knew I was looking good. And they were like, "You look bad." And I was like, "What are y'all talking about?" And so, we had that whole conversation, but they made me realize, like, you don't look good. And so then I end up having, at this point, when I lost all the weight, I was having a rounds of diarrhea. So with the diarrhea, it didn't matter what I ate, it come right out. And so once you get so tired of going to the bathroom, you just kind of stop eating. So it's like, I just really wasn't eating. And at this point, not realizing why I wasn't eating because my colon was so ulcerated. It hurt to eat at this point. But I, again, wasn't telling anybody, because I was like, "Oh, it's just a flare-up, it's a flare-up, it'll go away, And sometimes it might last a month, sometimes it might last 2 months, but it'll go away. Me going through this for years now, so from 17, at this point, I was 26. So at 26, I'm like, "Oh, it'll go away. It'll go away. It'll go away." I'm not even going to the doctor, because all they're going to do is give me some stupid medicine. And then, I'll just have to take that. Like, it'll just go away. So I did the things that I learned to do to cope. Right. So I end up, when I would have diarrhea, I would end up with a UTI. So the UTI comes from cross-contamination, because it's so hard when you got diarrhea, it's kind of splatter. It gets in your urinary tract. So that's what would cause the urinary tract infection. And so that's what took me to the doctor, the UTI. So, but the UTI got so bad, that's what took me to the doctor, because I went and got the over-the-counter stuff, like, "Oh, it'll be okay. I don't want to go to the doctor." For whatever reason, I just didn't want to deal with it until it got so bad. I end up calling a friend and saying, "Can you please come take me to the hospital? Like, I'm in so much pain." So I go to the hospital. At this point, I'm living in Atlanta, and I go to the hospital, and the lady, I'm a young 26-year-old Black woman, and this doctor says, "Oh, well, when's the last time you had sex?" "Ma'am, I haven't had sex in over 2 years. This is not sexually transmitted disease. This is a UTI. I have ulcerative colitis. I've been having a bout of diarrhea, and this happens often, but this time it's a little worse than what it's been before. So that's why I'm coming to the hospital, because it would take me too long to get a doctor's appointment." And she said, "Okay, well, we're going to test you anyway." So she tests me for all the STDs, and come to find out, "Oh, well, yeah, you do have a UTI." Well, she gives me this medicine. So at this time, from other UTIs, had realized that there was a medicine that I'm actually allergic to, and it's called ciprofloxacin. But I'd only heard it as Cipro, right? And so when the doctors would, "Okay, what are you giving me?" "I'm giving you Cipro." And so then the medical professionals that I'd encountered had only called it Cipro. So when she gave it to me, she said, "I'm going to prescribe you this ciprofloxacin." And I said, "I think I'm allergic to that." And she said, "Do you think, or do you know?"
Ooh.
Yeah. She said, "Do you think, or do you know?" And I said, "Well, I think I'm allergic. I know if it's called Cipro, I'm allergic to it. Is it other things that have the same name, because I was aware that, some medical stuff, everything starts with the same thing. She was like, oh, well, just, no, well, if you don't know, then you need to take it. And I was like, oh, okay, well, you're the doctor, right? So, but God, because let me tell you, so even though she was being neglectful at her job, God was working through her because I was in such a depressed state at the point in time of just being exhausted with doctors and not wanting to go to doctors. And my actual gastroenterologist at the time was out of town on vacation. So, I actually, after my friends talked to me, I called, but he was out of town and he wasn't going to be back for a couple of weeks. So I'm like, that's why I really wasn't trying to go to the doctor until he got back. So the next day, now, y'all, at this point, it hurt to drink water. Like, drinking water felt like I was eating glass. Like, glass was going down in my stomach. So that's why I wasn't eating. At this point, I had not eaten in 30 days. 33 days. I hadn't eaten anything. I was like trying to I would sip a little juice, sip a little something, but I wasn't telling anybody what was going on.
So you hadn't eaten in 30 days and you were still going out, walking, going to work, like functioning.
Like nothing ever happened.
Wow.
Yeah. And I was still, good morning, good morning, good morning, good morning, good morning. Yeah. Because it hurt to eat. So if I didn't eat, I didn't necessarily feel the pain. I felt the muscle ache, but if you've been in a hole, can you imagine being in having a muscle cramp that lasted for 5 years, 7 years, 8 years? Like, you just kind of get used to it, you know? And so, yeah. So I just kind of like, oh. So I hadn't eaten. And the next day, it hurt to drink water, but I knew I had to drink water. But the thing is, I was also overweight. So me not eating, I was losing weight, but my body was like kind of eating on itself, So it's not like I was, I wasn't bad off in that way. And I would force myself, just to drink water or to drink a little juice or to take a vitamin or something like that, but not really eating. So, the next day, when I didn't take the medicine that night, I took it that next day. I went to church. I prayed. I was like, Lord, is this what is happening? And even she asked me, what happens? Oh, I swell up. I start numb and tingling. And, my lips swell, all these things. And she gave it to me.
But you still didn't know you were allergic.
No,
according to her,
yeah,
you didn't know.
Yeah, even though I brought it up. So the next day I got up, I went to church. And I knew I wasn't feeling good at this point because, girl, I got up and went to church with some flip-flops on and like, I had like some flip-flops and just like a little long muumuu or something that I put on. And I went to church and I was just like, I just need to be in the building, Lord. So I went to church. I came home. I was like, okay, I'm going to take this medicine. I took the medicine and lo and behold, it wasn't 10 minutes later. Now I'm numb and tingling. I feel my lips start to swell up. So I called the same friend that actually took me to the hospital the next day to come back and take me back to the hospital.
Community is so important in these situations.
And when I tell y'all, I knew that God had a plan for my life because although my gastroenterologist was out, the next day I went to the hospital, the doctor on call was a gastroenterologist. She looked at my blood work. She took blood work. She took everything. Number one, she knew that I had a diagnosis of ulcerative colitis. So immediately she looked at me and she knew that something was wrong. She knew that I wasn't right. Immediately when she saw that I'd gone to the doctor that night and the doctor prescribed me this when I told her I was allergic, she looked at my labs from the night before and was like, oh my God, what was she saying? My white cell count. Anyway, my blood was crazy, right? My blood work was crazy. And so they came in and they was like, Miss Foster, do you need to call somebody? Because you're getting admitted. I was like, what you mean I'm getting admitted? Admitted? She was like, oh, honey, you're not going home. You're not. No, we scheduled you a colonoscopy and you need to come on with us. And so
And when you hear you're not going home, your heart just is like, but then I found that I find relief because I'm like, I can finally take the mask off.
Girl.
And I can finally admit what's going on when I used to be in those situations.
I was angry because I was like, wait, what do you mean? It's not going away this time? You know, it's not going away. And I'd actually met someone at my job once the ambulance thing happened, and there was another lady, and it so happened to be a Caucasian lady. She was like Caucasian, and she came to me and told me about her situation. And I was like, oh, no, I'll never do that. You know, she'd end up having her colon cut on and all of this. So I was just like, oh, my gosh, no way I'm going to deal with that. So they told me I wasn't going home. They immediately sent me for the colonoscopy. They come back and they say the words that you never want to hear. Ms. Foster, you need to have surgery. And we need to take you to surgery now. And it's life or death for you. And I'm like, what do you mean, life or death? What is happening? And I will never forget the words. The lining of your colon is so ulcerated that it could rupture at any moment and you would be septic and we would not be able to save you. And I was just like, wow. And so I started to pray. And I said, well, I'm not having surgery. I was like, what happens with this surgery? And I was like, well, number one, I'm not having surgery until my mama comes. So, you know, I was 26. So I was like, I'm not having a surgery until my mama comes. I'm in Atlanta. My family's from Arkansas. I'm there by myself, essentially by myself. I mean, I knew people, but I didn't have any family there. There is no way. I'd never had a surgery before. And, well, a major surgery. And I was not about to go under the knife without my mama. So I called my mom and dad. They were like, we're on our way. So that was an 8-hour drive. They said, we're on our way. And, you know, the doctor, she explained to me, and this was, did I say this was a black doctor and a black assistant?
Wow, that was you didn't tell me the whole story.
Oh, yeah. So the doctor that I went to the hospital the second day, that was a gastroenterologist. She was a black woman.
Okay.
And so she talked to me like she was my mama. You know, she was like, girl, let me tell you. If you die, you know, if your colon ruptures, you could die. Because I told them I wasn't having surgery. I was like, what? You about to take my colon, and what's going to happen? So what they told me was, depending on, you know, when they get in there, what it looks like, they were like, well, you know, she brought the colostomy bag, you know, they got all these diagrams and everything. And, you know, she went and she dealt with me very gingerly because she could understand. You know,
you don't want to hear that when you're that young.
Girl.
You know me, I got mine a year before I was married. And I'm like, I'm going to get married in Jamaica next year. Like, can we do it after that? And they were like, you're not going to be here in a year. And I'm like, I'm trying to be double cheeked up on the beach with my husband. And so I was not trying to do it. And so it's like, you're just not ready to hear this huge change to your body.
I was devastated. And at the point, I didn't have children. I wasn't married. And I was totally devastated. So I kind of went into shock. You know, I called my best friend. Like, she came up and she was like, I was like, I don't have any kids. And I just remember thinking, nobody's going to want me. You know, like, what is happening? I don't have children. How do you have children like that? You know, and the doctor was like, oh, girl, you know, it's no problem. And I remember my best friend, she came. She was like, I will have a baby for you. She was like, if you're not here, nobody's going to have you. I'll have a baby for you. Girl, how about her? How about Sasha's born on my birthday? And she called me. That's her youngest daughter. And she was like, well, I told you I was going to have you a baby.
That's beautiful.
So we literally do have the same birthday. But it was just really thinking about, I was really initially willing to die because I didn't know. I wasn't educated. I had no idea that people lived, you know, they flourished in life, you know, with this. And I just couldn't imagine it. And so The next morning, my parents came. I had surgery. It was a 7-hour surgery. They thought they were going to be able to take part. They had to take everything. So they took my all my colon. They took my colon and my rectum. And thank God, oh honey, I was a good girl. They left my anus intact. Y'all, this is, it's funny, but it's real. Like, when you have Crohn's and colitis, like, hey, rectum, anus, those are words that become very familiar, household terms, and it's
and
really
whatever
things
you can
you have
keep,
to talk
you're grateful
about.
for.
Yes. So, I ended up with a J pouch. So what a J pouch is they create you a rectum from the end of your small intestines. And they connected that back to my anus. But initially, I still had to have a colostomy bag for 4 months. And so, to my knowledge, this was something new. I had no idea that it could be reversed at the time. And so, I think it just depended on if you were a candidate or not. And so I had a really hard time going back and forth. Like, it was pretty bad. And so I had the surgery, 7-hour surgery, came out. I had about 5 months. It was kind of touch and go. There was a time that, girl, I was out of here. Like, after I still had the colostomy bag before they reversed it, and I didn't realize I was very dehydrated. And I was so weak, I wouldn't allow anybody to feed me, which I was too weak to feed myself. And so I wasn't eating. I wasn't doing what I needed to do. I wasn't drinking my shakes because I was literally too weak to just pull it up. And one thing I didn't realize is everything comes from your center. I had no idea. Like, it takes stomach muscles and back and all of that, to do pretty much anything. I had no idea at the moment.
And people don't have any idea that, like, there are so many things that are affected when your gut is not well. So with me, my skin, I developed a whole nother skin issue because of Crohn's and colitis. And so, that you saying that is so powerful because it's so true. And then any movement you do, your center is involved.
Yes. And so it was pretty crazy. And the thing, I know, y'all, is so much. Okay, let me get to the life part. So basically, there was a moment that I was dying. So my parents was gonna fly me back to Arkansas because my mom had taken off work. So, I was like, no, I'm not going to the doctor. Anyway, my mom made an appointment. We're going to the doctor. Get out the car. I pass out. They put me in the wheelchair. I slide out like a banana peel. So now I'm on the wheelchair, back on 2 wheels. So we're in the hospital, and all of a sudden I see this bright light. Bright light comes in. I can't see. So now, y'all, girl, I'm so weak. I only have a whisper. So I only speak in a whisper. So I say in that moment, in the wheelchair, back on 2 wheels now. Because I will slide out. So they're holding the wheelchair back on 2 wheels. And I whisper, Mama, I can't see. And I'm blinking my eyes, y'all. It's black. And then all of a sudden, my mom, I just hear my mom start saying, Lord, please, God, please don't take my child. Lord, please don't take my daughter. And all of a sudden, my ears start popping. And I hear, it's going down. The sound is going down. And then the last thing I remember saying, Mama, I can't hear. And the last thing I heard was God. My mom said, God, I'm not ready. Please don't take my daughter. And in that moment, when you know you're dying, and I was raised with a very religious family, and, you're always taught, if you have a chance, make it right with God. And so in that moment, in that wheelchair, I just said, God, if you see fit to take me at 26 years old, your will be done. And I asked for forgiveness for my sins. And the next thing I know, I was waking up looking at hospital lights, and I don't even know in this moment, I don't know how long I was out or what all they had to do, but I just woke up and I turned my head and I said, Mama. And she started shouting and praising God, of course. And you know, I still was, you know, back and forth in the hospital for a little while. But when I was able to get up, I went to a Crohn's and colitis walk, right? Mm-hmm. And so this is where I know it's taken a long time to get to how I was able to tell my story. I went to a Crohn's and colitis foundation walk, and the speaker there, I had been going through this for about 6 months because I was in and out of the hospital, right? I met a young lady. I don't remember her name. She was the speaker. She'd been in the hospital for 1.5 years. She'd had a 7-organ transplant.
Oh, my God.
Young girl. And in that moment, I knew, God, I'm here for a reason. I knew, like, oh, my God. Like, I thought I'd gone through the worst thing in the world. And this young girl had a 7-organ transplant. I didn't even know that was possible. She'd been in the hospital for 1.5 years, not with her family, not with anybody. And that day, I took my life back, you know, that day. And it's so important, representation, just for us to tell our stories. And that day, I decided that I was going to tell people that I'm a survivor, you know, mm-hmm. and that it didn't take me out. And that, you know, I know that it was God that took me a long way. But God, I went through all of that so we could be here today. How about that?
And I always say I thank God for keeping you here, because I know if I wasn't here, I wouldn't be the same person I am today had I not met you and had you not been comfortable in owning your story and been able to tell me what you went through. And so, like I said, it's an honor that you're my first interview, that you're my first person to join me on this couch.
You got me on here crying. I'm supposed to be cute. I wasn't supposed to be crying.
Because I went from a place of I never wanted to talk about this. I never wanted people to know, to building this platform because somebody's life could be saved.
Absolutely.
Because of this.
Absolutely.
And so, I honor you and thank you for sharing your story with us.
You are welcome.
Thank you for being who you are and for being brave enough to be seen.
You are welcome.
Thank you.
Thank you for having me.
If you want to hear more of these stories, please tune in when we have Seen Saturdays to hear more stories of real-life women making the choice to thrive visibly through their chronic illness. Thank you for joining us, and I look forward to seeing you again.